All right, let's dig into the surprisingly complex world of orchard design. You might think planting a tree is just, well, digging a hole and plopping it in, but when you're talking about a whole orchard, oh, it becomes this brilliant puzzle of geometry, efficiency, and some serious agricultural science.
So here's the challenge, right? Let's say you've got 1,000 trees to plant. How in the world do you arrange them so every single one gets enough sun, enough water, and enough space to thrive? And on top of that, you have to be able to actually manage the place and harvest the fruit easily. That's the exact problem we're going to unpack today. Okay, here's our game plan. We're going to start with the basics, the why behind the whole layout puzzle. Then we'll cover the classic grid systems, the OG methods. After that, we'll see how growers get creative to pack more trees in. We'll even tackle what to do on a hillside, and then jump to the really cutting-edge stuff with high-density planting, or HDP. And we'll wrap it all up with a big head-to-head comparison.
So, first things first, let's really get into why this matters so much. Because honestly, the choices a grower makes before that first sapling even goes into the ground, well, those decisions can make or break the orchard for decades to come. It's a huge deal. So when we say orchard layout, what are we really talking about? It's the systematic arrangement of the trees, and that word, systematic, is everything. This is not random. It's a carefully thought-out plan, basically the blueprint for a healthy, productive orchard.
And this is where the real balancing act comes in. You want to get as much sun as possible to every single tree, but you also have to be efficient with your land, right? You can't just space them miles apart. And you need to make all those cultural operations, which is just a fancy way of saying pruning, spraying, driving a tractor, as simple as possible. All of this while trying to get the absolute best yield. Every layout we're going to talk about is just a different attempt to nail this balance.
Okay, so with those goals in our back pocket, let's check out the foundational blueprints that farmers have been using forever. We're starting with the two most common systems, the ones that are pretty much the basis for everything else. And here they are, the two workhorses of orchard design. On the left, you've got the square system. It's exactly what it sounds like. Super simple, super clean, easy to work the land from any direction. Then on the right, you have the rectangular system. Here, you tighten the space between plants in a row, but you make the space between the rows wider. This lets you cram more trees into each line, which can be really useful for certain crops.
So those basic grids are great. They totally work. But what if you're on some prime, super fertile land, and you want to get really clever, maximize every single square foot? Well, that's when we start thinking outside the box. Literally.
And this is where the geometry gets kind of beautiful, actually. With the hexagonal system, you plant your trees at the corners of perfect equilateral triangles. What happens is that every tree ends up being the exact same distance from its 6 neighbors. It creates this amazing natural honeycomb pattern. A little trickier to set up, for sure, but man, is it an efficient use of space?
And this is why you do it. This is the payoff. By nesting the trees together in that honeycomb pattern, you can plant about 15% more trees in the exact same area compared to the old square system. Think about it. That's because there's way less wasted space between the trees. For a big commercial operation, 15% more trees, that can mean a massive bump in income. Okay, this question points out a classic problem. When you first plant an orchard using the square system, you've got this huge, empty, totally unproductive gap right in the middle of every square for years. And you can just imagine a clever farmer looking at that and saying nothing but wasted potential.
And the quincunx system is the ingenious answer to that problem. You start with your basic square layout, and then, bam, you plant an extra temporary tree right in the middle of that empty space. This filler plant is designed to make you money while your main, long-term trees are still growing up.
And here are some of the go-to choices for those filler plants. They're all picked for one reason. They grow fast and start producing fruit in just a couple of years. So they basically act like a quick cash crop, bringing in income while the main orchard matures. Then, once the main trees get bigger and need that space, the filler plants come out. Pretty smart, right?
Now, everything we've talked about so far kind of assumes you have a nice, perfectly flat piece of land to work with. But let's be real. How often does that actually happen? What do you do when you're farming in the hills? Well, you have to adapt your whole strategy to work with gravity, not against it.
This shows the two main solutions, and really, the choice just boils down to how steep the hill is. For gentle slopes, you use the contour system. You just plant along the natural curves of the land, which creates these little mini dams that slow down rainwater and stop your soil from washing away. But for really steep hills, you got to bring out the big guns, the terrace system. You literally carve steps into the hillside to create flat spots for planting and prevent a total landslide.
Okay, so we've gone from adapting to the land to completely revolutionizing it. Let's jump to the absolute cutting edge where modern farming is totally rethinking the idea of space and pushing plant density to its absolute limit.
High-density planting, or HDP, is a total game changer. It's a whole new philosophy. It uses special trees that are bred to stay small, and you combine that with really intensive management to pack way more of them into a smaller space. The goal is simple: get more fruit per acre and make the orchards easier to manage.
And if HDP is the cutting edge, well, meadow orcharding is the bleeding edge. This is as extreme as it gets. It started in Israel, and with this system, you're practically treating fruit trees like a field of corn. The spacing is incredibly tight, and it demands constant, precise management. You have to be on top of watering, feeding, and pruning all the time to keep these little trees hyper-productive.
And here is the mind-blowing result. With meadow orcharding, you can get a density of around 5,000 plants per hectare. Just let that sink in for a second. A traditional orchard might have, what, a few hundred? This is a completely different way of thinking about how to grow fruit. It's incredible.
So wow, we've covered a ton of ground, right? From the classic, simple square to an ultra-dense meadow. And the thing is, each system has its place. So let's bring it all home and put them side by side for one final comparison.
Think of this as your quick cheat sheet. Because there's no single best system, it all depends on your land and your goals. If you just want simple and easy, square's your go-to. If you want to grow another crop between the rows, rectangular is great for that. Got amazing, fertile land and want to maximize your trees? Hexagonal is your best bet. Need to make some money early on? That's the quincunx system. And of course, if you're on a hill, it's either contour or terrace. It's all about picking the right tool for the job.
So we've seen this incredible evolution, haven't we? From a basic grid to cramming 5,000 trees into a space that used to hold a couple hundred, all driven by this constant push for more efficiency. It really makes you wonder, right? As our technology gets even better and the world needs more food, what's the next big leap gonna be? What will the orchard of the future even look like?